The Vulpine people called it bonding optimization, which sounded polite until you realized it meant your entire worth as a potential partner could be reduced to a glowing chart and a disappointed sigh. She stood at the center of the evaluation chamber, paws clenched, tail wrapped around her leg like it was trying to hide with her. Light panels swept over her body in slow, invasive passes, humming softly as they collected data no one had ever asked her permission to share. Ear symmetry. Fur density. Tail fluff distribution. Emotional stability under stress. Pheromone resonance strength. The numbers appeared in the air one by one, hovering, blinking, quietly judging. The elders leaned forward. Two forward. One of them cleared his throat in the official way that meant bad news was about to be delivered with ceremonial politeness. Subject shows irregularities. Irregularities. Such a small word for something that felt so heavy. Her left ear dipped a fraction lower than the right when she was tired. Her tail, while undeniably fluffy, refused to maintain consistent volume in high-humidity environments. Her pheromones, this part always made her stomach knot, did not lock cleanly, with standard Vulpine bonding profiles. They drifted. Adapted. Reacted differently depending on mood. Unpredictable, the charts said. The council whispered among themselves, flicking through holograms that compared her to idealized silhouettes with flawless posture and tails that obeyed gravity like it was a polite suggestion rather than a law. One elder frowned at a readout labeled heat cycle stability and shook his head. Emotional spikes detected, he said. She runs warm. A few of the technicians snickered. She wished she could sink into the floor. Or at least cool down enough that her ears stopped burning. Another elder gestured at a graph labeled Bonding Compatibility Index. The line barely crawled past the minimum threshold before dipping again. Her resonance fails to dock properly, he said. Repeated attempts show no lasting bond lock. Dock. That word again. They used it for everything. Ship couplings. Data transfers. Marriage. She swallowed. So? She asked quietly, even though she already knew. The elder straightened, projecting sympathy like a trained signal. It means you are unsuitable for long-term bonding. As a bride. There it was. Clean. Clinical. Final. The chamber seemed suddenly too big, the lights too bright. Around her, other Vulpines, perfect ears, immaculate tails, pheromones probably calibrated down to the molecule, avoided her gaze. No one wanted resonance failure to be contagious. Her voice broke before she could stop it. No one wants me as a bride. The words echoed softly off the walls, not dramatic enough to be a scene, just tired. Honest. Like she'd been carrying them around for years and finally set them down. A technician coughed. Another checked a data pad, very interested in literally anything else. The elder offered a consolation smile. You may still serve the collective. Auxiliary roles. Support positions. Non-bonded living arrangements. Translation useful, but never chosen. They dismissed her with a gentle hand motion, already moving on to the next candidate. She walked out on shaking legs, tail dragging just a little too low to meet regulation posture standards. Outside the chamber, the spaceport buzzed with life. Ships docked and undocked with practiced precision. Couples passed by, tails brushing in synchronized arcs, pheromones humming in harmonious loops. Bonded pairs. Certified. Approved. She leaned against a bulkhead and tried to breathe. Maybe if she had fluffed her tail more that morning. Maybe if she'd slept better and her heat readings hadn't spiked. Maybe if she'd learned to keep her emotions from leaking into her scent like static interference. She laughed weakly at herself. The idea of optimizing heartbreak felt almost funny. That was when the human heard her. He was crouched nearby, half inside an open engine panel, grease smeared on his hands and jaw. His ship, a compact exploration vessel that looked like it had survived more bad decisions than battles, was throwing a warning about thermal regulation. Again. Come on, he muttered to the machine. You can't be overheating. We literally just docked. Docked. Always docking. He wiped his hands on a rag, stood, and turned just in time to see a fox-eared alien girl staring at the floor like it had personally betrayed her. Her ears twitched. Her tail flicked in distressed little movements that made no sense according to any behavior manual he'd ever skimmed. She sniffed, then said again, softer this time, "No one wants me as a bride." He blinked. Humans weren't on the official guest list for Vulpine bonding ceremonies. He knew that much. He also knew crying in a spaceport usually meant either heartbreak or a lost suitcase, and this didn't look like luggage-related trauma. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough with disuse and caffeine. She startled, ears snapping upright. Her eyes locked onto him, wide and glossy. A human. Tall. Soft-looking. No visible scent glands. No pheromone regulators. Dangerously unoptimized. "You heard that?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "Hard not to. Those chambers echo like crazy." She hesitated, clearly unsure whether explaining herself to a non-bonding species counted as social failure or emotional leakage. Then the words spilled out anyway. Rejection. Metrics. Compatibility scores. Heat instability. Docking failure. He listened, arms crossed, brow furrowed, not in judgment, but confusion. "So," he said slowly, "they turned you down because your bonding didn't, line up?" "Yes," she said bitterly. "My resonance refuses to lock." He glanced back at his ship, then at the open engine panel. "Huh. Mine does that too." She stared. "When the clamps don't align," he continued, warming to the analogy, "you don't throw away the whole ship. You adjust. Or you stop forcing it and let things settle. That is not how bonding works," she said. "Maybe that's the problem," he replied. She frowned, tail flicking. "You do not scan for pheromones?" "Nope." "Or calculate compatibility percentages?" "Only with software updates." "And you still choose partners?" He shrugged. "Yeah. Sometimes badly. Sometimes great. Usually with coffee involved." This made no sense at all. She opened her mouth, then closed it, overwhelmed by the idea of selection without certification. Of wanting without approval. He watched her for a moment, then nodded toward his ship. "Look, I don't know how your system works, but you look like you could use a break from whatever that was." She followed his gaze, misunderstanding immediately. "You are offering me shelter?" "Sure." "A private dwelling?" "Temporary, yeah." Her ears trembled. "You would bring an unbonded female into your living space?" He paused. "When you put it like that, it sounds way more intense than it is." Still, he met her eyes and said simply, "Come. Follow me home." The words landed somewhere deep and strange, not as a command, not as a claim, but as an invitation without conditions. For the first time since the charts lit up and condemned her, she felt something settle. Not lock. Not dock. Just rest. She discovered very quickly that following a human home did not mean what Vulpine cultural archives insisted it should mean. For one thing, there were no witnesses. No ceremonial markings. No pheromone exchange. Not even a moderately dramatic declaration of intent. The humans simply walked ahead of her, carrying a toolkit in one hand and muttering about coolant valves like this was the most natural outcome of overhearing a rejected bride in a spaceport. She stayed exactly 3 steps behind him, as protocol demanded when a claim was being processed. He did not notice. Inside the ship, the air smelled like metal, ozone, and something dark and bitter that made her nose twitch. She inhaled experimentally and immediately coughed. "What is that scent?" she asked. "Coffee," he said. "You'll learn to fear it and depend on it." Her ears angled forward. "It is a stimulant? And a lifestyle choice." She nodded solemnly, filing this away as human courtship ritual, liquid phase. The ship was small, functional, and very much not optimized for graceful tail movement. She bumped into a chair, knocked over a stack of datapads, and froze, mortified. "I apologize," she blurted. My tail clearance radius exceeds your interior standards. He glanced over. Yeah, I noticed. We'll work around it. Work around it. Not reject. Not recalibrate her tail. Just adjust the environment. That alone felt indecent. She perched stiffly on the edge of a bench while he finished sealing the engine panel. The ship hummed as system stabilized, the earlier warning fading away. Heat cycles under control now, he said. Her ears flushed hot. You resolved it already? Yeah. Just needed to let things cool down instead of forcing a full shutdown. She swallowed. Vulpine technicians would have scheduled a full diagnostic and blamed the component for failing to meet expectations. Humans, apparently, just let things breathe. She cleared her throat. When you said follow me home, were you initiating a long-term bonding proposal? He choked on his coffee. What? No. I mean home as in, my ship. As in, you looked like you needed a place to sit down and not be evaluated by a committee of judgmental fox grandparents. Oh. Her tail flicked in embarrassment. Then I have misunderstood. That's okay, he said. I misunderstand alien stuff constantly. Yesterday I offended a sentient moss. This did not reassure her, but it did make her smile a little. She studied him openly now. Humans had no tails, which felt like a design flaw, but his posture was relaxed, unguarded. He moved without the constant awareness of how he was being assessed. No scent masking. No resonance dampening. His emotional state was loud, somehow, even without pheromones. How do humans select mates? She asked carefully. He considered. Badly. Repeatedly. That is not an answer. Okay. We talk. We spend time together. We see if we like who the other person is at 3 in the morning when nothing's impressive anymore. 3 in the morning? An oddly specific bonding metric. And if you are incompatible? Then we break up. Or argue. Or adapt. Or decide it's worth the trouble. Worth the trouble. Her bonding charts had never included that variable. She shifted, tail curling around her leg again. In my culture, a bride must maintain optimal performance. Emotional fluctuation reduces bond efficiency. He snorted. Emotional fluctuation is the whole point. She stared at him. That sounds unstable. Yeah, he said cheerfully. We call it being alive. A silence settled, not awkward, just unfamiliar. The ship's heater kicked on with a low hum, pushing warm air through the cabin. She sighed without realizing it, muscles loosening as the chill faded. He noticed. Cold? A little, she admitted. My species prefers consistent ambient warmth. Good to know. He adjusted the settings. Let me know if it gets too hot. Her ears twitched again. Heat was a recurring theme with this species, and none of them seemed embarrassed by it. She hesitated, then asked, Am I imposing? He looked genuinely surprised. No. You're a guest. A temporary one? She pressed. For as long as you need, he said. No pressure. No pressure. No expectations. No bonding score ticking down in the background. Her chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with heat. I should warn you, she said. I have been classified as low demand. He raised an eyebrow. Is that supposed to scare me? It means no one competed for me. Great, he said. I hate competition. She laughed, a short, startled sound, then covered her mouth. Vulpines did not laugh during transitional social states. But the sound felt good, like releasing pressure from an overworked system. She stood, testing her balance as the ship subtly shifted. What are the expectations of cohabitation in human culture? Don't steal my coffee. Don't mess with the engine controls. Everything else is negotiable. And sleeping arrangements? She asked, ears burning again despite herself. He paused, then smiled, clearly amused. We usually don't jump straight to shared heat unless everyone agrees. Oh, she said quickly. I did not mean, I was referring to spatial efficiency. Sure you were. Her tail flicked in protest. Your language is very suggestive. That's on purpose, he said. Keeps things interesting. She processed that. Humans used ambiguity deliberately. No wonder their bonding patterns were impossible to predict. Later, as she settled into a spare bunk, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly like detergent and coffee, she stared at the ceiling and listened to the steady rhythm of the ship. No sensors tracked her pheromones. No charts evaluated her emotional output. No one asked her to optimize herself for acceptance. She was still unwanted by her people. But for the first time, she wasn't being measured. And that, somehow, felt dangerously close to being chosen. By the third sleep cycle, she concluded that human living arrangements were a long-term psychological endurance test disguised as hospitality. The ship was never truly quiet. Something always hummed, clicked, or beeped in a way that suggested it might fail catastrophically or continue working forever out of spite. The humans slept through all of it, sprawled in ways that ignored every ergonomic guideline she'd ever learned, one arm dangling, blanket half gone. She watched him once, briefly, from the doorway, just to confirm he was still alive. Humans, it turned out, trusted their environment far too much. During waking hours, he existed in a constant state of barely managed exhaustion. He drank coffee like it was life support, complained about gravity fluctuations that didn't exist, and fixed problems by poking them until they behaved. You live like this willingly? She asked as he reassembled a panel that had never actually been broken. Define willingly, he said. She tried to help. That was her first mistake. Vulpines helped by optimizing, by organizing, by improving efficiency until the system could not possibly fail again. She reorganized his storage compartments by frequency of use. She aligned tools by size and purpose. She recalibrated the heater to maintain perfect ambient warmth with minimal energy loss. He noticed immediately. Why does my ship feel judged? He asked. I improved it, she said proudly. Your layout was inefficient. He stared at the neatly aligned shelves. I knew where everything was. Statistically unlikely, she replied. They compromised. Which, she learned, meant both parties remained mildly dissatisfied but oddly pleased about it. Living together, temporarily, she reminded herself often, introduced her to a concept humans called personal habits. These habits included leaving clothing wherever it lost the fight with gravity, forgetting meals until hunger became dramatic, and talking to machines like they were disobedient pets. She found it fascinating. She also found it confusingly intimate. He cooked for her one evening, if cooked could be applied to heating packaged food and apologizing to it. She sat at the small table, tail curled carefully to avoid knocking over anything, and watched him move around the space with unthinking familiarity. You do this alone? She asked. Mostly. You have no bonded partner? Nope. Her ears angled forward. Why? He shrugged. Haven't met the right person. Or the wrong one at the right time. That sounded dangerously close to poetry. She decided humans must be accidental romantics. At night, the temperature dipped lower than expected. The heater struggled, cycling on and off in a way that made the ship creak. She woke shivering, tail fluffed reflexively to conserve heat. Vulpines were warm-blooded but preferred consistency. This was not that. She hesitated only a moment before stepping into the main cabin. He was awake, too, wrapped in a blanket, frowning at the heater readout. It's acting up again, he said. Heat won't stabilize. Her ears burned. Perhaps shared thermal mass would improve efficiency. He blinked. You're suggesting we, cuddle the heater? No, she said quickly. I am suggesting we increase localized warmth through proximity. He considered this far too long. You know how that sounds, right? Yes, she admitted. I am choosing to ignore it. They sat back to back on the bench, close enough that she could feel his warmth through the fabric of his clothing. It worked. The heater settled. The ship quieted. Either of them moved. This is not bonding, she said, mostly to herself. Of course not, he replied. Purely practical heat management. Her tail flicked. Your species is very casual about proximity. Only with people we trust. That word again. Trust. Not compatibility. Not optimization. Her chest tightened. The next day, Vulpine messages flooded her communicator. Official notices. Concerned inquiries. Thinly veiled warnings about prolonged exposure to non-certified environments. One message stood out. Extended cohabitation without bonding intent may lead to emotional imprinting. She stared at it for a long time. When he noticed her distraction, he asked what was wrong. My people believe I am risking myself, she said. They think I will form an attachment that cannot be validated. He smiled faintly. Sounds about right. That does not worry you. It would, he said, if attachment were something to avoid. She studied his face, searching for deception. There was none. Humans were remarkably bad at hiding what they felt, even when they tried. Later, when a minor system failure sent sparks across the floor, she reacted instantly, pushing him back and throwing herself between him and the panel. Her tail fluffed to full volume, instincts screaming. The system shut down harmlessly. He stared at her. You didn't have to do that. Yes, she said firmly. I did. They held each other's gaze, something unspoken passing between them. Not a lock. Not a bond. A choice. That night, as they sat with their shoulders touching, sharing heat again, she realized something unsettling. She was no longer waiting to be wanted. She already was. And that realization terrified her more than any compatibility chart ever had. They came for her with paperwork. That alone told her everything she needed to know. 3 Vulpine officials boarded the ship with stiff posture and perfectly groomed tails, their expressions carefully neutral in the way that meant disappointment wrapped in authority. They did not comment on the cramped interior, the exposed wiring, or the fact that the human was drinking coffee from a mug that read "Trust the process" while glaring at them. Citizen, the lead official said, addressing her without looking at him. Your prolonged absence from regulated environments has been noted. She straightened instinctively, then caught herself. Her tail did not wrap neatly anymore. It stayed loose, expressive. I was not informed there was a time limit on being unwanted, she replied. The official ignored the comment. Our data indicates emotional deviation beyond acceptable margins. You have been exposed to unstructured bonding conditions. He glanced at the human, finally. And to this. The human raised his mug in greeting. Nicers. The officials bristled. You are compromising her future, one of them said sharply. Humans fail nearly every compatibility standard. That's because your standards are bad, he said calmly. She felt something warm spread through her chest that had nothing to do with ambient temperature. She is not certified, the lead official continued. Her bonding metrics were already suboptimal. Prolonged cohabitation without formal intent increases the risk of irreversible imprinting. Imprinting, she repeated. You make it sound like damage. It is, the official said. If the bond cannot be validated. The human set his mug down. What if she doesn't want validation? Silence. That wasn't an option in their system. Wanting was not a recognized metric. She belongs with her people, the official insisted. She laughed softly. You did not want me. We wanted what you should have been. That is not the same thing. They turned to the human. Release her. This arrangement is statistically irresponsible. He didn't hesitate. Her choice. All eyes shifted to her. The pressure was familiar. The evaluation. The waiting for her to fail gracefully. She thought of charts and chambers and being told her warmth was excessive. She thought of shared heat that stabilized systems instead of breaking them. Of coffee mornings and terrible jokes and someone adjusting the heater without being asked because he noticed she was cold. I was told no one wants me as a bride, she said quietly. What you meant was that no one wanted to choose me. The official stiffened. She met their gaze, tail lifting high, unapologetic. I choose where I stay. This environment cannot offer you proper bonding. One snapped. She glanced at the human. He said nothing. Didn't interrupt. Didn't claim. Just waited. That, she said, is why it works. The officials left in silence, their disapproval thick enough to register on sensors. When the airlock closed, the ship felt lighter. He exhaled slowly. You okay? Yes, she said. Then, after a moment, I am terrified. Good sign, he replied. Means it matters. She stepped closer, close enough that her tail brushed his leg without thinking. Either of them commented on it. My people believe love should be efficient, she said. Optimized. Predictable. And humans believe? He asked. That love is inconvenient, she said. Messy. Illogical. He smiled. Painfully so. She hesitated. If I stay, there will be no certification. No guarantees. Yeah, he said. Just waking up every day and choosing each other. Choosing. Not docking. Not locking. Not stabilizing heat curves. Choosing. She nodded once. Then I will stay. He didn't cheer. Didn't grab her. Didn't make it dramatic. He just said, okay. That, more than anything, felt right. Later, when the ship drifted quietly through open space, she leaned against him, tail draped comfortably across his lap like it had always belonged there. He didn't comment. He adjusted the heater up half a degree. You know, he said, by Vulpine standards this is probably wildly inappropriate. Yes, she said contentedly. My heat readings are likely catastrophic. Good. She smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. I was never unwanted, she murmured. I was simply not optimized. And I, he said, have never optimized anything in my life. They sat there, sharing warmth, sharing space, no charts, no approval, no witnesses. Somewhere far away, a database marked her as lost potential. Here, in a ship held together by stubbornness and coffee, she was something far more dangerous. She was chosen.